Two. So looks like we got a live going on right now. And we got a couple of things to talk about, but more importantly, the main important thing that we're going to talk about obviously is UFC 328 this weekend. Okay. A very controversial fight, by the way, with a lot of political implications going on. Not only with a lot of political implications going on, just a whole bunch of controversies surrounding it. Obviously, Sean Strickland has threatened to bang bang Kamzat Chimaev, but that's only because he threatened to sort of get at him as well. Um, anyways, yeah, we're going to talk about that, and it's taking place in New Jersey. So, a state that I have a lot of familiarity with. Obviously, I grew up in that part of the world, so I kind of have a good understanding of the people there. And I think it's safe to say that a vast majority of people there are going to be supporters of Sean Strickland. That's kind of what I'm gearing towards now. I know Kamzat mentioned something to the effect about, having a lot of Muslim contingency in, in New Jersey. Okay, now that's certainly true. That is certainly true. There is a strong Muslim presence in New Jersey. That can't be denied, right? But let me give you a little bit of some experience about what I understood Jersey to be back in the days, okay? So let's go back in time, maybe around late 90s, so middle school time, okay? Right around my mid, yeah, late 90s, yeah, not mid 90s, late 90s, middle school time, New Jersey, was on a wrestling team. We were wrestling to school from Union, New Jersey. I wrestled out of Union, New Jersey, and then we wrestled a school named Hillsboro, right? They were known as a very good school when it came to wrestling, right? So we went there, and I remember one of the coaches was trying to talk to one of the black wrestlers, right, that was on the team, right? Because one of the black wrestlers was trying to get at, the local girls in that town or whatever. And so the coach blatantly just said to him, listen, this is a white folk town. They don't like your kind around here. Now, how would you take a comment like that when you're in middle school? And hey, remember, listen, this is New Jersey in the late 90s. Okay, there was no political correctness the way that teachers have now, right? Like people always used to complain about how teachers were, a little rough around the edges back in the days, right? That was the biggest complaint that a lot of people have. Oh, the teachers back in the days, uh they work the kids too hard in PE or something to that extent, right? Or they made the kids wrestle. How about this? Back in the days, if you had a problem with someone, they would ask you guys to go put on some gloves and box it out. This is how they used to settle beefs back in the days. This is how they used to settle disputes amongst people back in the days. Just get in there and bang it out, and we're going to see what happens. That's just how they sort of handled things back in the days. And this was a school. These were schools back in the day. So we're going to say about maybe in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, maybe they stopped doing it in the 80s, right? But yeah, boxing was just not part of the scholastic school system in America. But growing up in New Jersey, I will tell you what was, and that was wrestling, right? So if you grew up in New Jersey, okay, rest assured you would have had, some real good wrestling on your hands, right? Good wrestling programs, good wrestling competition. That's entirely what Jersey was all about. And obviously, this fight with Arman Sarukian, I'm sorry, not Arman Sarukian. I skipped ahead a little bit because obviously I was going to mention that Arman Sarukian is going to be backup fighter for the White House card, as he had mentioned recently in the PBD podcast, the Patrick David podcast. So, little interesting interaction they both had going on there, considering they're both Armenians and considering that, they sort of had a pretty nice rapport with each other, come to think of it, right? But obviously, not just the UFC, not just the full card that we're going to get into, because you know that I do a little bit of everything in this channel, right? The other thing we're going to talk about, obviously, is that Iran had attacked US ships just recently. So while you were worried about Kamzat Shamayev getting shot at by Sean Strickland, and while you were worried about whether Sean Strickland was going to make it to the finish line and have this fight, while you were worried about Kamzat Shamayev not making weight because he's had a history of doing so right under your nose, all of these things were going on in Iranian uh, military force attacked US ships. Now, what is the reality on that? Because when it comes to people chatting stuff about, wars and things happening and casualties and things of that nature, right? There's a lot of inaccuracies, okay, that a lot of people spew out there, just a whole lot of inaccuracies. By the way, guys, if there's anyone in here, right, that wants to drop in, make a comment, or this and that, you are more than welcome to, right? Because remember, obviously, that this show and this whole entire channel is obviously my channel, but at the same time, it is also your channel, your opinions, and what you would like to add to it. So if there is something that you feel you could add to the show, or something that you can contribute as some sort of intellectual exchange of some sort, I'm more than willing to take that. But on any regard, I think we're a little bit early right now into the stream. And not only that, as we're early into the stream, we're also streaming late at night. Also, I'm not in front of the camera as I normally would be, right? Just a little under the weather. But, anyways, not to digress. Okay, so what is it that people usually lie about when it comes to these things that are going on with the war in Iran, right? Well, obviously, some of the things that they lie about, okay, number one, they lie about the casualties. They lie about who died or how they died. And then sometimes they deny the person's position, their mission, or what they were originally sent out there to do. For example, a lot of people will, say that, let's say, a U.S. citizen got kidnapped, right? When in reality, it was somebody from the CIA, right? Somebody will say something to the effect of, five servicemen died, when in reality, maybe it was 20, and maybe they didn't want to let anybody know because they knew that it would have been a very unpopular war as uh, time had went on and as casualties had went on. But I tell you what, Trump, to his credit, regardless of what you think about him, and regardless of all the mishaps that he's committed, and believe me, there's many mishaps that Trump has committed as president, and many mistakes, and just many f ups that are just on an unprofessional level, right? We could talk about that. We can absolutely criticize that, but the reality is he's very blunt and honest with you, and that is one thing that he's always been consistent about. Okay, he told you that there's going to be casualties going on with this war, and there is absolutely nothing that you can do about that, right? That's just war. That's just what happens. That's just what it is by the end of the day. But he's very honest about it, right? He's told you that, which is interesting. So, okay, um, obviously this is a major escalation, okay, as of, I would say, about May 4th. Okay, Iran launched what is considered a coordinated attack using, get this, cruise missiles, drones, and small boats against US Navy warships and commercial vessels in a mission to guide hundreds of stranded commercial ships out the waterway. Okay, so what is the status of the U.S. warships going on right now, right? Um, so far, just from what we understand, okay, at least from official reportings, or I would say reliable sources and what have you, no U.S. ships have been hit, okay, despite the claims that Iranian state media that two missiles struck a U.S. destroyer near Jask Island, okay, which is, I believe, a U.S. Central Command Center that has explicitly denied these reports, stating that no Navy vessels were damaged. Okay, so apparently there was a successful transit. Okay, so two U.S. guided missile destroyers, the USS Truxton and the USS Mason, successfully navigated uh, into the strait and entered the Persian Gulf after repelling the assault. Okay, so what were some of the defensive actions that were taking place? So obviously, U.S. forces utilized Apaches and Seahawk helicopters to intercept drones and sink between 6 to 7 Iranian fast boats that attempted to interfere with the mission. So how does this impact, let's say, commercial shipping? Okay. Vessels targeted Iranians on commercial ships under U.S. protection, though no U.S. flag vessels were hit. Okay, so what were some of the damaged ships? Okay, there was a South Korean cargo vessel, okay, the HMM Manu, and a UAE oil tanker called the Baraka that were damaged in the explosion during the attacks, though no injuries were reported. So escorts proceedings at that, at least two U.S. flag merchant vessels, including a vehicle carrier from uh, Maersk, have successfully completed the transit under military escort. So regional escalation so far, attacks on the UAE concurrent with the naval engagement. The United Arab Emirates reportedly intercepted multiple Iranian missiles and drones. One drone strike caused a large fire at the Fallujah oil port and the UAE's largest oil storage facility. So, how did the U.S. respond to this? Obviously, Donald Trump warned that further attacks on U.S. vessels would lead to Iran being, as he would quote it, being blown off the face of the earth, right? With Trump's very emotive language, as you know. So, obviously, this incident has severely strained the fragile ceasefire in place of the April 8th, with both nations maintaining blockades of each other's ports and trade routes. So that is what's going on right now. And obviously, the sources out of this information that I got from was from Washington Post, Al Jazeera, NBC News, and CBS News. Yeah. I think that's it. Also, I think DW.com news as well, which I believe is a Dutch channel or a Dutch news network. But nonetheless, yes, that is what we got going on in the world right now, right? So a little bit of some current events on that one. And now we can move on to the UFC, right? We can move on to some UFC conversations right now. So let's see here. Um, Obviously this fight is in serious jeopardy because apparently Sean Strickland is so upset. He's so upset at Kamzat Shamayev that he's willing to crash out on him. But I got a couple of theories on that. Okay, number one, I don't think Sean Strickland is going to crash out. I just don't think he's going to crash out. Look, the truth of the matter is, Sean Strickland is not a dangerous criminal whatsoever. Okay, he's not a dangerous criminal. At one point, Sean Strickland joined a neo Nazi white supremacist gang. Okay. And a lot of people sometimes kind of hint at the fact that, oh, well, he did it when he was in prison or something like that. Right. Well, the fact of the matter is, it wasn't prison or anything to do with prison um, because he joined in the streets. Okay, Sean Strickland joined the Peckerwoods in the streets, but Anyways, that's a story for another time. Just kind of wanted to put it out there, wanted to let you guys know about that. But all right, let's get to the full card of this whole entire week. Okay, so obviously we got a big card ahead of us. Let's just start from the very top. Okay, let's start from the very top and then work our way down all the way to the first fight of the evening. Okay, usually what a lot of people like to do is they like to start from the first fight of the evening and then work all the way down or work all the way to the main event. I figured most people are probably going to be watching this live as you are right now. So, oh, we got a comment here. Daniel Barry Post says, "Hi guys, happy Monday." Yes, happy Monday to you as well. Let me know what part of the world you are from, Daniel. Sorry about that. Didn't even see that comment right there. Okay, so first fight of the evening. Obviously, we got Sean Strickland taking on Khamzat Chimaev. Okay, my official prediction for this one. It's going to be a fourth round submission. And you know what's crazy about this, right? In Sean Strickland's entire career, he has never been submitted, ever. Sean Strickland has never been submitted, which is crazy. Okay, think about this, right? He's lost by decision 5 times in his whole career, lost by decision 5 times. Okay, but he's won 14 decisions. He's knocked out 12 guys and has been knocked out twice himself. He's won 4 submissions. I'm not really sure exactly when that was, right? When was it that he won his submission? That was all the way back in UFC 171. And then after that, he never really submitted anyone after that. It was just TKOs, decisions, TKOs, decisions. That was Sean Strickland's career trajectory for the most part, right? Sean Strickland's career trajectory for the most part after UFC 171, which he got his last submission, it was just decision, decision, TKO, decision, Brendan Allen, TKO, Christoph, decision, goes to a decision with Uriah Hall, goes to a split decision with Jack Hermanson, goes blood in and guts out with Alex Pereira, gets knocked out in the first round. Jared Cannonier gets a split decision, but he loses that one. Nazardine Imavov, he wins that one by decision. TKO against Abu Magomedov, and then Israel Adesanya wins by decision. So you get the point, right? That was the last time that he did it, but he was never submitted in his whole entire career. And by the way, that is what makes this fight really even more interesting if you really think about it, right? Because he's never been submitted. We know that Khamzat Chimaev is a submission artist. We know that Khamzat Chimaev is going to try to go full force in this. And what exactly do I mean by full force? Well, I need you to think about this, right? If you look at the Kevin Holland fight, how did Khamzat Chimaev get down? As soon as the bell rang, he went into the middle of the octagon, looked for uh he looked for Kevin Holland, shot in, and look, he didn't even breathe while he was doing that, right? Like I don't mean not literally breathe, but you guys know what I mean. Like literally did not even take a breath, did not even take a minute to rest or even just think about what he was doing. He just went full force into it, and that was that, right? So he's going to be pushing a very high pace. Now, what's interesting about this? What is interesting about this is that I'm not sure if he can get away with doing that against Sean Strickland. Okay. And the reason why I don't think he can get away with that with Sean Strickland is because Sean Strickland pushes a very high pace. And this is something a lot of people say all the time, right? They say that Sean Strickland pushes a very high pace. All right. Pushes a very high pace, has very good cardio. But at what extent? At what extent is his cardio really that good? And also, it's good for striking, but is it good for grappling? And that's something a lot of people forget, right? How many times have you really seen Sean Strickland get tested with his grappling? Not many. Not many times have you really seen Sean Strickland get tested with his grappling. Uh, I think this time you will, right? Just like you've never seen Sean Strickland submitted before, I think this is going to be one of the first times that you're going to see him get submitted. Okay. And comes out as a man to do it. How will he do it though? How will Khamzat Chimaev do it? I think that it's not a mistake that a lot of people say Sean Strickland has very good grappling, right? I don't quarrel with that at all, right? Even though we don't see it a lot, but I don't quarrel with the idea that he has good grappling, right? I believe he has good grappling. Uh, but a lot of people have never challenged him on it, or not many people have really seen it. But this time you will, because I think there's just levels to this, right? I think Kamzat is a generational talent. I really do. I really do believe that about him. I think that he's a generational talent. And I think ultimately what makes him a generational talent is because of the fact that he knows how to grapple. The fact that he knows how to grapple and the fact that he's better at it than everybody, I think is where you're going to see a lot of extraordinary skills come out. I think you're going to see a lot of that. Uh, I don't, yeah. But the thing is, Sean Strickland has never been submitted. He's never been submitted. Now, look, is there a chance that, let's say, he gets a TKO victory in this? Sure, sure. There's a chance of a TKO victory via ground and pound. That is a possibility. Uh, I don't quarrel with that idea at all. Um, but Sean Strickland has never been TKO'd in the grappling department. If you really think about it, he's never been. Yeah, he's never been TKO'd in a ground and pound position. So it's really going to be interesting to see how this is going to play out as a result of that. Um, yeah, man, I would be really surprised if Khamzat Chimaev knocks out Sean Strickland as well, right? Because it's not something that we normally see out of Khamzat Chimaev. Um, I'm going to name this Dangerous Fight Week. That's what I'm going to put on the thumbnail, because that's another thing too, right? All these things that Sean Strickland is talking about, how he is going to shoot Khamzat Chimaev or this and that. Is it really? Is it really that he's scared of Khamzat Chimaev and he's trying to get out of the fight? This is sort of the narrative that MMA Joey is going at right now, right? And I don't know if I buy that. Okay, as somebody who vehemently and openly supports Kamzat, I don't know if that is the case. I don't know if you can honestly say that, oh well, you know what, it's because of the fact that uh Sean Strickland is scared of this fight. He's just in here for a money fight. It's kind of weird people saying that. And I think I kind of understand why people are saying that, right? Why they think Sean Strickland purposely wants to get out of this fight. I could understand why. The reason why is because as fans, we know that Khamzat Chimaev is the heavy favorite, right? We know that he's the heavy favorite. So the notion that Sean Strickland actually thinks he has a chance, okay, is really ridiculous for us, okay, especially if you're a hardcore fan, especially if you're one of these guys that has no attachments to any of these people. And I'm not talking about the Sean Strickland fans, because the Sean Strickland fans are like, oh yeah, man, you know what, guys, he's got a chance to win, they're going to ride and die with him no matter what. But what about Sean Strickland himself? He truly believes that he's going to win, and that should not be a surprise to a lot of people, because ultimately, if you're a fighter, okay, you know in the back of your mind that you're going to beat everybody. You know that you're going to beat Prime Anderson Silva. You know that you're going to beat Prime Mike Tyson. There's no doubt about it. That is what you know in the back of your mind that you are capable of, or what you think you're capable of. Okay, and there's no deviation from that. That's Sean Strickland in a nutshell. Okay, he knows, or at least he thinks he knows, that he has a chance against Kamzat Chimaev. And you, as a hardcore fan, you don't think so. You don't think that he has a chance. So therefore, you think in your mind that he's just in here for a payday. He's in here to try and get out of the fight. That he's scared of Kamzat Chimaev. But that's not the truth. The truth of the matter is, each and every single one of us, okay, as fighters, we honestly believe that we can beat anybody at any given time, and very few people can understand that. Okay, just like when Buster Douglas took on Mike Tyson, how many people did not believe that he had the chance to win that fight? A lot of people counted him out, and rightfully so. Rightfully so, they counted him out, because Mike Tyson at the time was one of the hottest fighters, okay, in decades in the world of boxing. Nobody has ever came the way that Mike Tyson has, and has presented himself to the world as this invincible force of nature in boxing. Right now, all of a sudden, here's this guy named Buster Douglas, who had his mom pass away weeks prior to the fight. Now extra motivated, now taking on the most dangerous man in the world, in Mike Tyson. And what does he do in the process? He goes and he shocks the world. You know who else did this? By the name of Sean Strickland against a very formidable longtime champion in Israel Adesanya. Now, granted, by the time that Israel Adesanya had fought Sean Strickland, I think there was a little bit of his aura that sort of went down. I'm talking about Israel Adesanya. What aura was that? Well, how about at the time when he tried to go for a double championship fight and failed against Jan Blachowicz? And I believe this was during the pandemic. I remember it well, man. It was the pandemic that Israel Adesanya tried to go for a second belt, and he failed. Right? He didn't fail miserably. Like, he obviously went to a decision with Jan Blachowicz. Right? There's no shame in that. But the fact of the matter is, he lost, and from there, his aura started going down. But he was still very formidable. He was still beating guys left and right. And then here came Sean Strickland, right? It was in the home country, or at least the home region of Adesanya. And we figured, you know what? Adesanya is going to win this. Why would he not win this? Why would Israel Adesanya not win this? And he didn't. He ended up not winning it. Sean Strickland upset Israel Adesanya. And then after that, Sean Strickland just became the biggest, I wouldn't say the biggest star, but I would say he became the biggest star that he could be for himself, right? He became the biggest star that he can be for himself, and ultimately his popularity grew, especially for these, chuds that are out there, right? These right wing chuds that are like, yeah, man, everything is based. Yeah, he's so based, or this and that. And don't get me wrong, man. There's a lot of things that these types of people I could get behind with, right? Like, for example, I could get behind the notion of, being a real man. And I'm trying to be very careful about what I say because you know that we live in a very heavily canceled culture society right now. But yeah, you know what I mean. There's some things that I agree with that they got going on, and then some things that I don't agree with, and that's just really what it comes down to. But make no mistake, right? I know a lot of people are expecting Sean Strickland to make another upset like this, like the way that they did with Israel Adesanya, the way that Sean Strickland normally can do, right? But here's the thing, right? I think Israel Adesanya was at a decline at the time that he beat him. And I also think there were some injuries involved with Israel Adesanya to consider, right? That is something to consider fully, is the fact that you're dealing with a compromised person. At least this is from the accounts of Israel Adesanya. And here's the thing, I'm going to believe Israel Adesanya, right? I don't think he has any reason to lie about that. I don't think he has anything to gain from saying that he was injured, right? And it's also plausible if you really think about it, right? The type of sport that these guys compete under, it's plausible that he was injured and compromised. So I say that to say this. I think Sean Strickland is very limited in the type of people that he can beat in terms of high level competition. Okay. Let me explain to you what I mean by this. Okay. Looking at Sean Strickland's record. All right. So he beats Anthony Hernandez. Okay. That's a given that he beats Anthony Hernandez. Anthony Hernandez is not championship level. Dricus Duplessis, even though he was beat by Kamzat on a championship level, Dricus Duplessis is a champion, and Sean could not beat him. Polo Costa, really good. Okay. And in fact, aging very well right now, even after his loss against Israel Adesanya, because you see the fall off with Israel Adesanya, and then you see the fall off with Paulo Costa. At least that's what people are saying out there. But here's the thing, Adesanya was champion. Costa was never champion. And maybe Costa now has a chance to be champion at 205. Who knows? But there's always matchups there that they can make. Imagine a world where, I don't know, let's say Khamzat Chimaev wins this weekend, right? And as a result of Khamzat Chimaev's win, he goes and moves up at 205. And now who's up there at 205? Obviously, Alex Pereira is no longer there. He's going for heavyweight. And if he loses to Cyril Gahn, which I predict he's going to, is he going to go back down to light heavyweight, or is he going to continue a campaign up in heavyweight? Maybe maintain a campaign at heavyweight. But who's now left in the light heavyweight division? Obviously, Carlos Ulberg, the champion. Carlos Ulberg is the champion. And what if you had Paulo Costa beat Carlos Ulberg? And now you got Khamzat Chimaev taking on Paulo Costa for the 205 belt. Those are the hypothetical worlds. But not to digress, the point that I'm trying to make here is what type of level of people can he beat? And here's the thing, he lost to Dricus twice. Okay, he lost to Dricus uh, as a defending champion, so he never defended the belt. And that's another thing too that I'd like to address. A lot of people like to say that, oh well, if you never defended your belt, you were never champion. I don't buy that. I just believe that if you do you have a title defense or do you not have a title defense? You are already a champion. Like the idea that you have to defend your belt to be considered a champion, I think it's just language from people who were multiple time world champion defenders and then people who were never world champion at all. right? So that insult sort of comes from those two places. So where did those two insults come from that I just mentioned? The people who were never champion, and then the people who were champion that want to place themselves above that person that they are comparing to. So in other words, you have Charles Oliveira, who was a former 155 champion. But the reality is, even though he was a 155 champion, guess what? Conor McGregor was also a 155 champion. But what's the difference? Oliveira defended his belt, McGregor didn't. Okay, so that's all it is just a low hanging fruit argument for fighters to make just to compare their resumes. But nonetheless, he never defended his belt because once he won against Israel Adesanya, he lost to Dricus du Plessis. I'm talking about uh, um, Sean Strickland. Okay, he TKO's Abu Magomedov. That's a given. He gets a decision over Nasruddin Imavov. That's a given. He loses to Jared Cannonier, who, by the way, at the time of 2022 was a high level operator, and then loses to Alex Pereira prior to that, which makes sense. It makes sense that he would lose to Alex Pereira because Alex Pereira is at a very high level right now. So that could only make sense for that reality. Jack Hermanson, he beat Jack Hermanson. Jack Hermanson's not championship level. Uriah Hall, he beats Uriah Hall, never championship level. Obviously, he had the potential to do so, but never got there. Brendan Allen, the same thing. Jack Marshman, not many people know who that is. That was, by the way, his return to the middleweight division. That was in 2020 after a 2-year hiatus back in October of 2018. And then coming back 2 years later at 2020, right? So yeah, he was off for 2019, and then loses to Elizu dos Santos, gets knocked out with a spinning wheel kick. So obviously he's been knocked out before. Beats Court McGee, loses to Kamaru Usman. Okay, that's another pattern right there. What is the pattern there? It's a champion. A lot of people forget that Sean Strickland also had a loss against Santiago Ponzinibbio, but that was by decision. Beats Luke Barnett. Luke Barnett and Sean Strickland are connected through Andrew Tate because Luke Barnett trains with Andrew Tate. But yeah, not championship level. Bubba McDaniel's not championship level. And then a whole bunch of names that don't have Wikipedia pages. And that's Sean Strickland's career in a nutshell, right? He beats the guys that he needs to beat, right? That are top 10, even top 5. But once he reaches top contenders, he can't beat them. And then everybody else in the lower divisions, in the lower ranked tiers that he's lost to, like Ponzinibbio and Dos Santos, right, and Uriah and Jared Cannonier. I mean, what I'm trying to tell you guys is that these guys are just not as elite as Khamzat Chimaev on that end, just not as elite. So I'm going to have to give this one a Khamzat with full confidence. So that is my official prediction for that one. Khamzat by 4th round submission because he's going to have to cook him a little bit in order to finish him off. So that is my decision on that one. 4th round submission, rear naked choke. All right, so that's what it is. It's going to be Khamzat 4th round submission. Now, why do I say 4th round, right? A lot of people are saying very early on, it's like the Kevin Holland fight where Khamzat came in there, shot in, and just basically handled business straight away, right? I don't think that's the case here. I don't think that's what's happening here. What I think is going to happen here is that he's going to have to cook him a little bit. I think you're going to see a side of Sean Strickland uh, that has very good grappling. Okay, you're going to see that side of him here. You're going to see a side of him that's going to have good grappling. That's not a doubt. He will have good grappling here. He will have decent exchanges when comes at Chimaev, but ultimately he's going to succumb to Khamzat Chimaev's grappling skills. But Khamzat's going to have to cook him just a little bit, just cook him a little bit, right? But he'll eventually get him, and he'll eventually catch him as a result of that. So that's my official prediction for that one. Fourth round. Yeah, we could go with third round, right? Or but it may take him a while to cook him. It doesn't go past the decision or the score. It doesn't go to the scorecards whatsoever. But it will take a while for him to cook him a little bit because by the end of the day, Sean Strickland is still a high level operator. So on to the co-main event: Joshua Van versus Tatsura Taira. Okay, so I'll tell you what I really think is interesting about this fight, right? So very similar to how I had mentioned that Sean Strickland sort of had this fluke win. I wouldn't say fluke win, but circumstantial win against Israel Adesanya, right? He was injured or this and that or the other, right? It just so happens that he fell the wrong way. I'm talking about Pantoja, and Joshua Van won it. Nonetheless, the positivity that you got out of that was that the UFC got to market one of the youngest champions ever in Joshua Van, right? That's a plus for the company, right? On top of that, he's Asian, he's also American because he trains out of Houston. So there's a lot of things that the UFC can get behind, right? Minimar, not exactly a big market for the UFC. Obviously, there's a Myanmar fighter by the name of Ong Lang that trains, I believe he's trained with Luke Rockhold before, but you guys know who I'm talking about, the 185 fighter from 1FC, right? Ong Lang. Okay, but he's not in the UFC, obviously, and he's a much larger fella. So it's a way different type of marketing that they would have to do for him as opposed to Joshua Van. But Joshua Van, 24 years old, young, second youngest champion ever next to John Jones. But he has got a lot to prove. He's got a lot to prove. Okay, because remember, this is a guy who got knocked out by Charles Johnson. This is a guy who got knocked out by Charles Johnson, a guy in Charles Johnson who got dominated by Muhammad Makayev, who's not even in the UFC anymore. Now, granted, he's not in the UFC anymore due to certain political reasons or due to certain behavioral or disciplinary reasons, but nonetheless, he's not in the UFC, and that is who he lost to, was a guy that got beat up by Muhammad Makai, who's not even in the UFC, and that was Charles Johnson. Knocked him out, right? The first loss of his career was a rear naked choke by a guy named Devin Jackson. Doesn't even have, um, yeah, he doesn't even have a Wikipedia page, but that's fine, right? Obviously, he was very young at the time, right? December 21st, so he was probably even barely just, I don't know, like 18 or 19, barely 20 years old at the time. So very young in his career. So no shame in that. No shame in that. But when you look at after Charles Johnson, right? Edgar Chairaz, he beats him by unanimous decision, gets a decision over Cody Durden. By the way, Cody Durden did great in his last fight, right? Rai Tasuria gets a decision over. No, this time he TKOs at UFC 316. He TKOs Bruno Gustav da Silva, TKOs him. Brandon Royval, that was a fight of the night. That was a great fight, by the way, a well-deserved fight that got you to the dance of a title fight, right? It was one of them type of fights that was perfect for that regard, for that occasion. So yeah, it earned him a shot. That Royval fight, that was legendary. Did Brendan Royval fight after that? Let's see. He did. He did fight Manel Cap after that, and then he got knocked out. All right. So he got knocked out in that fight. Um, all right, but it was a fight of the night nonetheless, and that was back in 2025. They probably won fight of the year in that one. And then we move on to when he actually won the flyweight championship. Once he won the flyweight championship, all of a sudden people started second guessing him because they thought, well, you know what, maybe this is just a fluke win that you had going on. So he's got a lot to prove here. He definitely has a lot to prove here just based off of that alone. Now, we've talked about Joshua Van and his career trajectory. Let's take a look at uh where his opponent came from. All right, so let's check this out, right? Let's see. Okay, Tatsura Taira. So very interesting, right? Very interesting background when I was watching the countdown show. I had noticed that he grew up playing baseball when he was young. Playing baseball when he was young. Okay, but I'll tell you what's significant about this, right? If you notice, Stipe Miocic grew up playing baseball as well. If you notice, that meant fast twitch punches with overhand rights. You look at the way a pitcher throws, right? Or even just outfield guys, or even just third baseman, second baseman, or even catchers. Just, I mean, you're required to know how to throw a ball in any regard, right? I mean, you look at Conor McGregor's horrendous job at one of those opening baseball games, right? It just it never really came to fruition for him, right? As a future prospect for baseball, but nonetheless, he didn't grow up playing American sports. But anyways, you translate that over into fighting or boxing or throwing overhand rights. Obviously, it's there, right? The speed, it's there, footwork, coordination, knowing when to hit, right? These are very important fundamentals that you could learn from baseball that perhaps maybe you could take into fighting. And this is Tatsura Taira, right? And obviously, Japan is very big in they're very big in baseball. That's just what they do. They're very big into baseball. They like baseball. Um, they are a dominant baseball country along with the Dominican Republic. By the way, another guy who's in this card that's also with a heavy baseball background is Waldo Acosta. So, yeah, but we'll talk about him later on. But all right, so yeah, he played baseball from the time he was in third grade, but was not passionate about it, and he sort of took a break from it during his junior high from his club activities. Okay, so he was basically influenced by his older brother, who was learning kickboxing at the time, right in Okinawa. Okay, he started attending the gym in his first year of high school and trained in mixed martial arts under Ryota Matsuen's guidance, okay, which in 2017 he won his 11th Kyoshi Amateur Shudo Championship Tournament at the All Japan uh, Amateur Shudo Championship Tournament and was promoted to the professional ranks with a record of 10 wins in his 10 amateur Shoto fights. He said that he lists Marlon Cheeto Vera as one of his favorite fighters. Um, so really interesting there. Okay, so okay, this is a very well-rounded fighter, right? The only loss he's had was against Brandon Royval. Okay, and that was a split decision. Mm. So you see the common denominator here. That was a split decision. He's had pretty big wins against Brandon Moreno. right? He had that win back in UFC 323 against Brendan Moreno. Park Yun Sung gets a submission face crank. Has a win over Alex Perez. Has a win over Edgar Shiraz. A little bit of a common opponent that him and Joshua Van have. But here's the most common opponent of all, right? Brandon Royval and him got fight of the night. So could we expect the same out of him, right? Or is it that Brandon Royval maybe just knows how to bring that type of tenacity out of you, right? Maybe it's just Brandon Royval, and then you've seen the effects of that war that brought him, right? He got him knocked out by Manel Cap afterwards. Um, so I think this is going to be a war between Tatsura and Joshua Van. This is a tough fight to pick, honestly. This is a very tough fight to pick. Wow, very tough fight to pick. I know this fight is going to go to a split decision, but to who? Will it be Tatsura or Joshua Van? I might have to go. I might have to go with Joshua Van, but I'm not confident in that one. Yeah, I'm not confident in that one. Um, you know what? Here's my official prediction for this one, right? I'm gonna go with Tatsura Taira. That's my official prediction. Yes, I'm gonna go with Tatsura Taira. I'm gonna tell you why in a second. Okay. The reason why, the reason why I'm going with Tatsura Taira is because he's never been knocked out before. He's never been submitted. Okay, it just seems that all this time he was hyper prepared in every single one of his fights, except for Brandon Royval, which he could have easily gone in any direction, just like Joshua Van. That fight could have gone in either direction. But I feel he's going to be very difficult to finish. And not only is he going to be difficult to finish, he might even be difficult to outpoint. Okay. Yeah, he might even be difficult to outpoint. That's what I think. So let me see if we can. Let me see if we can pull up some fights of this guy right here. Okay. Let me see what I can pull up here. So what's up, my man? Shout out to you, man. Shout out to you. Who is this here? Brian. Brian, how are you, man? He says, what's your favorite Kamzat fight? My favorite Kamzat fight, I'm going to have to give that the Gilbert Burns fight, right? Because obviously a lot of people are going to say that that was not his best performance. Sure, I can agree with that. Wasn't yeah, you believe that it was in your opinion that it's a Burns Kamzat fight too, right? Because look, here's the thing, right? What I like about that is number one, I like Gilbert Burns. He's a great guy. And as a great guy, I wish him nothing but the best. And for him to be part of a fight like that, right, it goes down to his legacy forever, right? No matter how bad he did, no matter how he lost his last fight before he retired, None of that matters, right? He will go down for that fight legendary. Same way with Kelvin Gastelum. You look at Kelvin Gastelum right now, he's not doing too well in his career. Adesanya, he's not doing too well in his career. But guess what? You can always look back and say that that fight between Kelvin Gastelum and Israel Adesanya in Atlanta was red hot, and you can't take that away from him. Brian says, but the fight against Holland was very beautiful too. It was. It was beautiful because we knew the type of destruction that Kamzat Shamai was and the type of level that he was at, right? Like he was not in the business of, being in there with with Kevin Holland, right? In fact, they kind of switched his opponent, and even the original opponent, which was Nate Diaz, wasn't really that proficient in the first place, if you really think about it, right? I mean, they just kind of put him there because it was Nate's last fight out of his contract. They really wanted to do him dirty out of the UFC. So they sent the UFC's number one hitman, and that was Kamzat Chimaev. But then they decided, you know what? All right, we're going to switch this up. Instead, we're going to give you Kevin Holland, since you and Kevin Holland got beef anyway, that you guys started backstage, right? If you remember, Darren Till back then, was saying to Kevin Holland, Kevin Holland was saying, he's like, yeah, man, I got homies out here in California, fool. You know that? And then Darren Till was like, mate, I have my own boys out here too. I got me own mates out here in California. Did you know that? Brian says Nate Diaz versus Kamzat is business malpractice. Business malpractice. Well, more like business as usual, right? That's what the UFC does, man. The minute that they know you're going to another organization, they want to devalue you. I think that's sort of what's going on with Conor McGregor right there. He says just too one-sided. For real, for real. And you know what? I think that it would have been so one-sided that the aura that Nate Diaz had would have ruined his future money-making abilities, right? Like, for example, the Netflix card that he's going to be in next week, right? Right after this week, right? The next fight week next week. Yeah, man. If he would have never gotten that opportunity, he would never gotten the opportunity to box Jake Paul and so on and so forth, right? He would never had any of these opportunities as a result of that. But the fact that they spared him away from Kamzat, I mean, obviously that allowed Nate Diaz to further his name and to further his prediction. He says, "Is your prediction by Kamzat in round one or two?" No, I had predicted. So this is my prediction so far, right? So far, I'm only working on the co-main event and main event, right? So I'm going to work my way down to the card, right? So Kamzat, I have fourth round submission because I think that it's going to take him a while to cook um, Sean Strickland. And by the way, Sean Strickland was never submitted ever in his career, right? He's been knocked out twice. Most of his losses were by decision, but he's never been submitted. I think this is going to be one of the first times that he gets submitted, but he's going to have to cook him a little bit. We're going to see a little bit of some good grappling defense on the part of Sean Strickland, right? He's going to show that he's formidable. He's going to show that he's a high level operator and he can stick in there. But ultimately, I think he's going to succumb to the grappling prowess and the grip strength of Kamzat Chimaev. He says, if it stays standing after round three, uh, do you start to panic? No, I don't. Because here's the thing, right? This is a very good question, by the way, right? Which kind of leads me to tell you what I feel about Kamzat in ways that he can literally do anything he wants in this fight, including the striking. In other words, he's a better striker than Sean. Sean is, all right, he's a proficient technical striker, but I think Kamzat Chimaev has this God-given strength that I think the minute Sean Strickland is going to feel it. I'll give you an example, right? Ivan Drago, when he boxed Apollo Creed, I know this is fiction, but try to work with me here on this one, right? Apollo Creed, in the way that the story is written, is the more experienced boxer. So obviously, the more technical boxer, obviously, the more experienced boxer. But Ivan Drago has freakish strength, okay, through a lot of the strength and conditioning workouts that he does, right? You look at Sam Kavia. What is Sam Kavia do when comes out? He's basically running an Ivan Drago experiment. So, in other words, the minute that he throws a punch at Sean Strickland is going to feel it and he's going to get hurt and he's going to think about it and then he's going to adjust because that is what good strikers do. Oh, snap, he hits pretty hard. Okay, maybe I need to back away a little bit. Maybe I need to play defense a little bit more. Brian says if Kamzat wins by KO on the feet, I'd be happy. Our UFC would be in shambles. Are you saying that the UFC would be in shambles if Kamzat Chimaev was to win? Is that what you're saying? Let me know if that's what you are saying right there. You're saying that they would be in shambles if Kamzat Chimaev was to win, uh, or if that's not what you're saying. But yeah, please confirm with me what you're saying so that I can, further, have full context in what you're trying to convey, if you can, please. So yeah, that's my prediction for that one. And then the Joshua Van Tatsura Taira fight. It's a shocking prediction, right? I'm going to a Tatsura Taira on this one, even though I really like Joshua Van, and even though I really want to see Joshua Van do good. Okay, I just think that Tatsura has been almost perfect his whole entire career. Okay, remember, Joshua Van is susceptible to making mistakes. He's young. That's a possibility, but he's also very green and inexperienced compared to Tatsura Taira. Now, Tatsura Taira obviously has a background in other sports prior to going into MMA, but he is a lifelong mixed martial artist. Okay, and at 26 years old, he's hitting his prime a little bit closer than Joshua Van. What I'm trying to say is that Joshua Van is great right now, but he can be even greater. Okay, what we're seeing out of Joshua Van right now is a premature version of GSP uh, before GSP got beat by Matt Serra. Okay, that is what we're seeing now. After the GSP that came after defeating Matt Serra at the rematch, what did we get? We got the best GSP prime since his return against Michael Bisping. We just have not seen that with Joshua Van yet. I think with Tatsura Taira, man, one fight where he lost was a split decision where he got fight of the night against Brandon Royval, and that same Brandon Royval went 3 rounds with Joshua Van, got fight of the night on that one as well, right? So there's a common denominator there. There's a common denominator, and that is the Brandon Royval fight. Okay, Brian says they dislike grapplers, so they root for any striker. Oh, yeah, you're right about. You know what? It would depend, right? Look, I don't want to say that the UFC is heavily discriminating towards grapplers per se, right? Like, I don't know if I would go as far as buying that specific generalized statement, right? I don't know if I would go there. What I do know is that they don't like boring fights, and sometimes grappling doesn't always have to be boring. Kamzat at one point was not boring with his grappling until he had to face higher level competitions. Khabib had very exciting grappling. That's kind of the point that I'm trying to make, right? When you fight at a higher level, finishes don't often come, and you see that in boxing as well. And I think it's just kind of hard to notice because when you see guys move up in boxing, if you notice, right, especially in the lower weight classes, earlier on, they're knocking guys out. Earlier on, They're putting guys to sleep, and then next thing you know, they're in there with other boxers that are high level and highly proficient at a world level, at a championship level, and they just can't put them away because they're high level operators. But even if you can't put someone away, you know who is who and who is what and who is more dominating than the other when it comes to these exchanges. Brian says Dana loves Kamzat. So here's the thing, right? What comes with Kamzat is the fact that he is a Muslim superstar, right? I need you to understand the reason why this fight is happening is because of Donald Trump, even though Kamzat is not at the White House. Okay? This fight is happening because Trump approved of Kamzat's visa to come to the United States when prior to that, during the Biden administration, in which they had a serious personal vendetta against Russia, they decided they were going to punish other Russian athletes, in particular Khamzat Chimaev, who has a vast, strong relationship with the dictator, Ramzan Kadyrov. But yeah, guys, that is my prediction for the main event and co-main event. Let's get to the rest of the cards right here, right? Let me mark this down on my timestamp right here. Okay, so we're going to get to the rest of the cards. We're going to get to the main card, actually. Main card prediction. So we had the main event and co-main event. Now let's get to the cards underneath that. So official prediction for the main event, Kamzat fourth round. Official prediction for the co-main event, Tatsura by split decision. I think these guys are going to go down the wire. All right, Alexander Volkov and Waldo Cortez Acosta. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking. Waldo Acosta, great prospect, probably the next guy to come out of the heavyweight division. Here's the thing, right? I think that Costa might be a little bit too short for Alexander Volkov in this one, right? Now, obviously, Alexander Volkov is beatable, but he's beatable for guys that are taller than him or guys that are close to as tall as him. Derek Lewis, 6'4", 6'5". Tom Aspinall, 6'4", 6'5". Right? Alexander Volkov listed as 6'7". Waldo Acosta, not really the biggest guy in the world, but big enough to cause damage. 6'3". And by the way, earlier I had mentioned Waldo Acosta was a baseball player, right? If you guys remember, I told you guys he was a baseball player, right? So he has that certain, aggression towards him, right? I'm sorry, that athleticism, not aggression. Sorry, getting a little late out here in the West Coast, but yeah. Anyway, so yeah, he has that speed and explosiveness about him, right? Volkov really knows how to use his strength. What is this 2 inches thing? He says Volkov is lying about his height and is actually 6'9", not 6'7", huh? Okay, yeah. So why would he lie about his height? Yeah, he does seem very tall, right? Way taller for 6'7". So I could yeah, I think I could agree with that. All right, let's take a look at his past fights so far, right, in the recent times. Obviously, that win against Jailton Almeida. Jailton Almeida ended up getting kicked out of the UFC for that one. He got cut by the UFC. I don't know. Maybe he'll get signed to MVP, maybe ONE FC, Ryzen. Who knows? So prior to the Jailton Almeida fight, he loses to a split decision against Cyril Gane. Right? Many people thought that Volkov won that fight. But, instead the UFC did him a favor, gave him Jailton Almeida. He wins by split decision in that one as well. He gets a win over Sergey Pavlovich, which got him the Cyril Gane fight. chokes out Tai Tuivasa. By the way, how about Tai Tuivasa, right? Just consecutive losses in a row. I think it's just about that time that they cut him right now. I would be surprised if they didn't cut him. But anyways, yeah, Alexander Romanov, he gets a win off of that one. Rosenstruck, as I told you, Tom Aspinall loses to Cyril Gahn again the first time around. But the second time, obviously, a lot of people thought he won that one. Alistair Overeem. But who knows, man? Waldo Costa might surprise you. Okay, let's take a look at where hit. Man, these are very difficult fights to predict. I'm going to be honest with you, right? Very difficult. Um, Hold on, let's take a look at his stats right here. All right, so Salsa Boy, 17-2. All right, obviously lost to Sergey Pavlovich. That's a win that Volkov has. That's a common opponent that they had. Has a win over Derek Lewis back in January. Has a win over Shamil Gaziev. And, Wynn didn't age too well, especially with Shamil's current performances. Has a win over Ryan Spann. Ryan Spann's doing pretty good. Robles Depanges, obviously in karate combat right now. Andre Arlovsky now fighting at BKFC. Loses to Marcos Rodrigo de Lima, by the way, who, by the way, fought this weekend at the Bare Knuckle FC card. How about that? Um, Tyler Betts. Shout out to you, Tyler Betts. Welcome, my man. Welcome to a little bit of this late night live stream that I'm doing right now as we're covering the fight. So right now I'm at a 50-50 toss between Waldo Cortez Acosta and Volkov. Who do you have in that one? You can have your pick, but I gotta have my pick. By the end of this, I'm kind of having a hard time picking. I'm sort of stuck right now. I can see why a lot of people who make prediction videos don't do these things live, man. Because you know what? Sometimes when you run across a fight like this, you start thinking to yourself, I don't know about this one. I don't know who's going to win or what. You know what? I will go with Alexander Volkov split decision win. That's going to be my prediction for this one. Volkov split decision win. Now, why am I going for Volkov split decision win? I just think the Sergey Pavlovich fight, the fact that Waldo could not beat him and Alexander did, I think that kind of gives me a little bit of an intrigue towards Alexander Volkov's side. And on top of that, a lot of people will agree that Alexander Volkov won that fight against Cyril Gahn, and I think many hardcores out there who kind of understand the fight game and that are not, trauma, fanboys could understand that Cyril Gahn has a great chance of really putting it on Alex Pereira. But anyways, man, yeah, Volkov could be one of the best heavyweights in the world right now, and we just don't even know it, right? He could be like what Daniel Cormier was to John Jones. John Jones was a top man, and then there's Daniel Cormier. Well, right now, Tom Aspinall is a top man, but then there's Tom Aspinall, and then there's Volkov, who's clearly the number two man, meaning that he can beat everybody except for that of Tom Aspinall. We got a comment right here. Let me see this. Tyler Betts says, I'm at a toss up too. Gonna watch the tape this week and decide. Yeah, so right now I'm gonna go with Volkov, right? Just by the stats alone that I had just mentioned. Right. He had a great win over uh Cyril Gahn, which obviously on paper Cyril Gahn won that, but it could have gone either way, right? Not all losses are losses, especially if you know what you're looking at with decisions and close decision fights like that one, right? So, yeah, yeah, I'm going with Volkov on that one, right? I know that's a tough matchup because look, here's what's making it tough, right? What's making it tough is that Waldo Costa seems to be this new guy. You know how it is. Every time there's a veteran and then they put him up against a new guy, usually it's a new guy that wins, right? Like I know the UFC is not like boxing, but man, sometimes it kind of is. Like, they kind of put them in there with certain guys for a reason, and next thing you know, the veteran becomes this, glorified journeyman or something, right? That's not the case here, right? These are two guys with mutual opponents in which Volkov did better within those mutual opponents and Sergey Pavlovich. And then on top of that, um, this is a guy that, arguably has beaten probably the next interim champion or the next two-time interim champion in Cyril Gahn. Tyler Betts says, any thoughts on Dubois versus Wardley? That's a tough fight, but you know what? I'm going to have to go with Wardley on that one. I know that's going on the same day, so we got a pretty fun day ahead of us for UFC Fight Day on May 9th. That's also on a May 9th day. It's British boxing, which is great. You got British boxing in the morning, and then you got UFC at night. So if you're off on Saturday and you got nothing else to do on that day, and you got all your schedule cleared, which I did for that date, you got a good chance of watching a good boxing fight and in a good UFC championship undisputed fight at night. So yeah, I like it, man. I like it, but I think Wardley wins that one, and I think Wardley is very interesting, right? He's a guy that came from white collar boxing, which is really interesting, right? He didn't come from the backgrounds that Anthony Joshua or the bronze bomber Deontay Wilder did in the Olympics or nothing like that. Like he just basically, and you know what? Not even just on the unconventional sense that that these other guys take, like Hamza Shiraz or Tyson Fury. Like they didn't even take those types of routes, right? He went to the white collar boxing routes. You know what white collar is? It's basically a bunch of dudes that work at an office and decided, hey, we're going to go box on the weekend. That's what white collar boxing is. And he did that. Now he's fighting for a world title because remember they're scattering Alexander Usyk's belts around. So, something to think about. By the way, speaking of Alexander Usyk, right? Just kind of wanted to segue this a little bit. Obviously, yeah, he said great insight. Thank you, Tyler Betts. Yeah, and I pick him to win. You see, like with the Tatsura Taira fight, right? I picked Tatsura Taira to win based on stats, based on uh, um, status quo, uh, experience, level of competition that he's faced, level of competition that he has not lost to in comparison to such and such, right? But Wardley, I just think that I just think that it's his time right now. And look, I think Dubois took a lot of damage from the Usyk fight. I really believe that, right? Like he took a lot of damage. So, I don't know, man. At this point right now, Dubois could be, very much damaged goods, but you never know. Um, so yeah, man, that's all right. But we did make a pick for the third fight before the co-main event, which is Volkov and Acosta, and I'm going with Alexander Volkov on that one. Right, very tough fight to pick. But all right, next fight. Um, Buckley versus Sean Brady. Yeah, man, I think Sean Brady's just going to lay and pray Joaquin Buckley the whole time. I know that we've seen Joaquin Buckley do well against wrestlers like, okay, he did decent against Kamaru Usman, but he clearly lost against Kamaru Usman, right? And Kamaru Usman is a great grappler. Sean Brady is no different. I just think that Sean Brady is going to be even more blatant with his grappling than that of Kamaru Usman. And what do I mean by blatant? Well, obviously, Kamaru Usman has great striking, but even in the midst of that great striking, uh, he has the capability. He has the capability of also grappling, so he doesn't go to it straight away. I think Sean Brady is just going to go like from the beginning of the bell. He's going to shoot in for a takedown or clinch up and just be a wet blanket all over Joaquin Buckley for the whole entire fight. That's what I think he's going to do. He's going to be a wet blanket and he's just not going to let go and he's going to ride off into an easy 3 round decision. Sean Brady 3 round decision. That's a little bit of an easier pick right there, right? But you never know, man. He could probably knock out Brady as well, right? It's a toss up. You never know. But I'm going with Sean Brady. When it comes to MMA, grappling is a sure thing. Okay. Now, once in a while, lightning strikes, right? Like, what's an example of lightning strikes? Obviously, Masvidal knocking out Ben Askren in 5 seconds. Okay, that's a lightning bolt. Okay, there's lightning bolts and then there's law enforcement. Okay, so why do I compare grappling to law enforcement? Because here's the thing, the IRS is a law enforcement agency. You guys know that, right? You guys know that IRS agents train in firearms training, right? So as a result of that, there's a couple of things that's guaranteed in life: death and taxes. And when you don't pay the taxes, guess what happens? It's the IRS that comes after you, and they come after you like a wet blanket. Okay, they garnish your wages, they go to your workplaces, they try to send you harassing emails or harassing phone calls, right? It's a wet blanket. That's what they do. They are a wet blanket. Okay, and that is what Sean Brady is in this fight. He is that. He is law enforcement, whereas Joaquin Buckley, and no racially pun intended, is the lightning. Okay, so we'll see what strikes first. But we know that in the world of MMA, and just like in real life, there are some things that are guaranteed. In MMA, grappling is guaranteed, and in life, taxes and death are a guarantee. So I'm going with Sean Brady by 3 round decision. All right, I know we got some comments for that one. Um, Great insight. He says, waiting for Buckley KO betting line to drop. What do you mean by that? Now, I'm not a gambling man. Obviously, Tyler bets means that you're heavily involved in grappling. What do you mean waiting for the Buckley betting line? Are you saying that they don't have a betting line for Buckley yet? Explain that to me, if you will, please. He says, a close fight, though. Are you talking about with Buckley and Brady? He says Buckley overextends his combinations, allowing for takedowns. Yes, exactly. That's sort of some of the things that I'm seeing there too, right? A lot of counter grappling that you might see out of Sean Brady if Sean Brady doesn't initially initiate the first takedowns first. So something to think about right there. Brian Kowalski says Morales didn't do that, stuck to the 1-2 and didn't follow the takedowns. Okay. Tyler Betts is Bilal Muhammad KO Brady lightning strike? Is Bilal Muhammad KOing Brady lightning strike? That's a good question. What that was when you have two consummate grapplers canceling each other out. So at that point, it just comes down to who worked on their striking better, who spent a little more time in Thailand when it came to working on their Muay Thai, who spent a little more time in the Chicago boxing gyms, boxing all of these boxing prospects that are signed to PBC or any local, boxing promotions in the United States, right? Like he was doing all of that, right? So obviously he was able to knock him out just based on that. That's just really what it was. Two grapplers that cancel each other out. And as a result of canceling each other out, he was able to have um, success in the striking department. Um, Brian says no. If Brady can't get the takedowns, then it's likely. Yes, I do believe though that he will get the takedowns for this one. Tyler Betts says Buckley is a slight underdog. M. The props like KOs aren't available yet though. Oh, okay, okay. Wow, okay. Well, I would have thought that they would be, right? But I guess they kind of want to wait, during the week or something, right? Maybe they just, yeah, kind of want to wait it out and, yeah, and see what's what. All right, so that's interesting to know, man. Yeah, thank you. I mean, obviously, I'm not a betting man, so I don't understand that part of MMA the way you do. But thank you for letting me know that, just for educational purposes. Because obviously, as a Muslim, we don't bet, we don't gamble. It's not what we do. At least that's what I try to advise the brothers not to do. But nonetheless, yeah, he says, if Gaethje beats Ilya, would it be more shocking moment than Leon KOing Usman? Of course, bro. Because you know what? Listen, here's the thing, right? With the Usman thing, all right, granted, that's Usman, okay, and Leon Edwards makes sense. Okay, it is what it is. But here's the thing, all right, Ilya is undefeated. If you remember, Usman was not undefeated. He had that one submission loss from the regionals. That was about it. Um, but Ilya is undefeated, and it's done at the White House. And it'll be the second time that Justin Gaethje will spoil the party for the UFC. Remember, Justin Gaethje was not supposed to beat Tony Ferguson, but he did. He spoiled it, and as a result, he's the one that got the last fight with Khabib. Okay, this is what this guy does. He spoils the party for everybody. When he went in there against Fiziev, he ruined that one. Fiziev was supposed to be the next 155ers coming up, but then all these older 155ers are just in there kicking butt. So I don't know, man. Yeah, it would absolutely be a bigger and more shocking moment, right? And obviously, Donald Trump at that point is going to glaze Justin even more. Oh, yeah, the American fighter, this and that. And that's another thing a lot of people don't talk about with this White House card fight, right? Justin Gaethje is the silent underdog. No, 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 not underdog. That's not the word I'm looking for. He is the silent protagonist in this whole entire story. What's an example of that in a movie? Um, you ever watched the movie Above the Rim with Tupac? Remember that guy who plays a security guard, right? Like, we know Tupac is a big star in that movie. He plays the antagonist, right? He's the bad guy. He's the villain, right? We also know that guy Kyle, right? The basketball player. He's the leading role, right? The movie is about a basketball movie, so he's a leading role. But the security guard, well, he is the silent protagonist. He is the protagonist of the movie that we didn't know we were rooting for. Because in the end, guess what happens? He ends up, I don't know, man. He ends up saving everybody in the end, right? So yeah, he says, yeah, this card, he says, Usman was pound for pound number one, and 3-1 on the scorecards. Yes, so that's quite shocking. So they would have to produce something that is a bit of a shocking equality to that scenario right there, right? Like, where, let's say, Ilya is beating the heck out of Justin, and out of nowhere, Justin comes out with a 459 knockout after getting knocked out at a 459 in the fifth round, the way that he did against Max Holloway. Right now, that's what would make it even bigger. And it's at the White House, and it's against an undefeated foreigner at the White House in American soil. So, um, thoughts on Taichi, and who do you have in the Tyara Van fight? Oh yeah, I said it's going to be a very close fight, but I think Tyara is going to win that, even though I really like Joshua Van. But if I got to put my reputation for it as you know as an MMA content creator, yeah, I'm going to go with Tyara. Right? I just think that Tyara has made less mistakes in his career. The one loss that he had was a win over Brendan Royval, which a win that Brendan Royval got uh, that Joshua Van got over Brendan Roy win over Tyara, which, I mean, doesn't really say much, later on. But yeah, um, I'm going with Tyara on that one. Split decision, though. It's going to be a close fight, but I think he edges it. He says AP is a protagonist. I hate Gon for trying to gouge Tom's eyes out. Facts, man. Brian says Tyara versus Van ain't that predictable. No, it's not, and that could go either way. But the common denominator that I want you guys to look at with the Tyara and Van fight is the Brendan Royval fight, right? Never mind the fact that Brendan Royval got slept by Manel Cap recently in his fight. Think about the Brendan Royval fight in mutuality to Tyara and Joshua Van. You watch those two fights and you make a decision for yourself. Who do you think is going to edge that one out? And I don't know, man. I just think that he just made less mistakes in his career, and I think that he's a lot more experienced at MMA than Joshua Van. And Joshua Van is very green in MMA if you really think about it. Very green. Brian says, seems up in the air for me. Who you got? Epic Labs. Oh, yeah. Shout out to Epic Labs, man. Yeah, forgot to shout out your name here. I did read your comment, but forgot to say who it was. But yeah, shout outs to Epic Labs. So let's see here. Epic Labs says, you're right. Van is kind of a paper champ who still has something to prove. Tyler Betts, Tyara with a W. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, man. Because look, think about this, right? Uh, Joshua Van, the way that he won, we don't know how that fight would have gone with Pantoja. We just know that he caught the kick and he threw him, and it broke his arm. On any given time, and at any given second, at any given sequence, maybe Pantoja survives that, or maybe he doesn't break his arm, or maybe he falls the right way and doesn't break it. So, yeah, thoughts on Justin Gaethje training with him? I think that's good, right? Considering the fact that once you're getting to this level of championship level, you got to train up there with championship level guys, right? So I think it's the right course of action that he's taking. So yeah, man, W for Tyara training with Justin Gaethje on that regard. Um, let's see here. What else? What else here? Okay, yeah. Um, Bobby Green versus Jeremy Stevens. All right, so I'm gonna call this Green, King Green. Let's just put his name right here because that's what he wants to be identified and called as these days. So King Green versus Jeremy Stevens from BKFC. Okay, this right here is a straight up West Coast OG fight right here. Okay, Jeremy Stevens reminds me of those half Mexican, half white kids that just have like this, insane tenacity about them, right? And then Bobby Green, obviously, representing Southern California. I mean, this is a very interesting fight right here, right? This is like, okay, let me tell you what's awesome about this fight in addition to all these other fights in the card. What you got in this whole entire card is old school, okay, represented by Jeremy Stevens and Bobby Green, right? These guys are the old school of the old schools, right? We're talking about, early 2000s, mid 2000s, 2010s, 2020s. They've been to all of them. Bobby Green has been in the organization for a long time. Jeremy Stevens hasn't been in the organization for a long time. He's fighting out of BKFC now, coming back to UFC. And I think there's a little bit of some partnership going on with the UFC and BKFC at the same time, which I think is really interesting, right? Um, Let me see the comments here. Uh, Brian says Van is a dog, though. Okay, if he can survive the early rounds on the ground and wait for Tyra to fatigue a bit, Van can let those hands go. Yes. That being said, I got Tyra by submission. I'm not confident though. Yeah, I mean that's why I'm giving yeah, I'm giving a split decision on that one, which I think Tyra edges out a little bit. Bobby Smoke Stevens. I would have to agree with that. Look, I think Stevens being brought here is like a participation trophy or some kind of like nostalgia feel that people wanted to sort of get out of this, right? They wanted to get the nostalgia feel. So all right, let's bring Jeremy Stevens up in it. Okay, that's kind of what they got going on here. But yeah, I'm gonna go. I'm gonna agree with Tyler Betts on this one. I'm going with Green by decision. I think that he pieces up Jeremy Stevens. I think Jeremy Stevens is a brawler. Bobby Green is a much more technical striker, and I think that's exactly what he's going to do. He's going to dance around him for 3 rounds. He's going to put his hands down. You're going to see some good exchanges. I think you may even see Jeremy Stevens get knocked down a few times, and I would also be surprised if he's able to knock down Bobby Green, but I highly doubt it. I don't think he's a technical enough striker to do that. But then again, you never know. There's a reason why they made this matchup, right? Look, put it like this, right? Jeremy Stevens coming off of BKFC, right? Literally still a contracted fighter in a BKFC. After this fight, he's still going back to fight in BKFC. Would it make sense for them to put him up against a grappler? Of course not. So they put him up against Bobby Green, because this fight right here could easily be a BKFC fight as well. Now, imagine a world where Bobby Green gets released from the UFC, right? He gets released from the UFC, and then he goes and fights at BKFC. That is a possibility in this world. This is a strong possibility. But we have it here in the UFC as an undercard to Kamzat and Sean Strickland, and it can't get any better than that. They knew what they were doing with the type of audience that people like Sean Strickland and Kamzat Shamayev have. And then on top of that, obviously, nowadays, since his affiliation with TJ Dillashaw, in turn, that affiliates Kamzat with Bobby Green, in turn also with Rampage Jackson, right? With the Jackson camp. If you notice, he was training at the Jackson gym. So yeah, yeah, I'm going with Bobby Green decision on this one. He says, "Do you think Tyler Betts asked? Do you think Bobby will wrestle at all?" No. That's exactly the reason why they matched up Jeremy Stevens coming off of BKFC, bringing him back into the UFC for a temporary, how do I say this, talent exchange or borrowing talent of some sort, right? Because remember, they have a very strong relationship with the UFC. BKFC does, because guess who the co-owner is? None other than their biggest star ever in Conor McGregor. So you kind of see, a strong connection there. But no, I don't think he wrestles at all. Epic Lab says he's just too small for the MMA lightweight division. You're talking about Jeremy Stevens. So I don't know. Maybe he kind of got big after a while, right? I mean, after you get older, you sort of start gaining a good amount of weight. So they're both 39 years old right now. So once again, two OGs in this game right now, both 5'8", both with 71-inch reach. And look at their record. I mean, very identical, right? Jeremy Stevens has almost close to a 50-50 record with 29 wins and 22 losses. But then you got Bobby Green with 34 wins and 17 losses. Still a very good record, but obviously a record that is more than normal in the world of MMA. So that is my prediction for the main card. Now, let's move on to the preliminary card. So you got Atea Gautier taking on Ozzy Diaz. I'm going with Ateba Gautier on this one, right? The Cameroonian nightmare. I think he knocks out Ozzy Diaz in the first round. This is just one of those fights that they bring in a guy like this to, yeah, get the easy knockout, and that's exactly what he does. Amazov, this is another one. Joel Alvarez. Joel Alvarez is good, but Amazov is a former Bellator champion, and it's been a long time coming. Yeah, man, he wins this one. This guy ran in the building. Okay, my audio just went off on that one. Just wanted to make sure you guys still hear me on this one. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Let me make sure that you guys are still hearing me on this one right here. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Rooney and nightmare. I think he knocks out Ozzy Diaz. Rooney and nightmare. I think he knocks out Ozzy Diaz. Rooney and nightmare. I think he knocks out Ozzy Diaz. Rooney and nightmare. I think he. Okay, mic check 1 2 1 2. Okay. Some things are out of reach. He says Charles and Dustin P both came from from featherweight to lightweight. Yes, facts. Hold on, let me just make sure. He says not sure that's true about featherweight not being able to perform at lightweight. Okay, yeah. Um, okay, just making sure my is my thing back on, guys? Let me know. Hey, are you guys able to hear me? Okay, mic check 1 2 1 2. Okay, all right, good. We're back. We're back. Okay, sorry. Okay, so all right, going back to the fight. So okay, I got Gautier by knockout. Amazov, obviously former Bellator champion. This guy was in the middle of a firefight in Ukraine. Okay, because obviously the Ukraine and Russian war is going on, right? He went into a burning building to try and save his Bellator belt. And I remember they were talking about that today in the preview show, and Dean Thomas was like, man, I don't know, man, he should have just left that belt there. Like, oh man, it was like it was a little bit of an insensitive comment to say. I mean, considering that they were at war, but I mean, it's what it is, man. Whatever. But all right, Mateus Rebecci taking on Grant Dawson. Okay, very interesting fight right here. All right, so Grant Dawson. Let's see where Grant Dawson has been in his career thus far. All right, let's see where he's been in his career thus far. So he took a loss against Manuel Torres, got knocked out. Let's see where Mateus Rebecki it has been in his career. Okay, so he's in a 2-fight losing streak. All right, so this is a bit of a losing streak on this. I'm going with Grant Dawson by decision. Yeah, I think the 2-fight losing streak is a little alarming for me. Obviously, he's just coming off of one a loss, just one loss, as opposed to Mateus coming off of two. I think that Grant is probably going to fight very careful on this one, right? Which I think he edges a decision on this one. So, let me see here. AR says review Inoue Nakati Benavidez, Gilbert Zordo Ramirez Resendez versus Munguia, Bilal Fawaz versus Kelly. Oh yeah, the Eggington Walker fight, right? So the Walker fight, you know what? The way that it ended, it looked like the Conor McGregor versus Floyd Mayweather fight. And by the way, it ended in the 10th round also. Not a bad career for Sam Eggington. By the way, Sam Eggington is barely just 32 years old, right? So you got to remember, man, he's been doing this for like over a decade. So he was already in big matchroom cards when he was like 22 years old 10 years ago in 2016. So not a bad career for him. The Bilal Fawaz Kelly fight, I didn't see that. The Resendez Munguia fight, I did see that. That was very good. The Benavidez fight, yeah. So they're talking about um, getting him to fight Alexander Usyk next, right? So yeah, they're moving him up fast, man. He's like, man, forget Canelo. If Canelo don't want to fight me, I'll just move up a weight class and and just do that. So, all right, let's get to the rest of these cards right here. So, what else? Okay, so Rebecci, Jim Miller versus Jared Gordon. I might have to go with Jared Gordon on that one by decision. I think that Jim Miller, has had a great career, 42 years old. I just think that he has limits. I think that, yeah, Jared Gordon is going to take this one. He says, I won big on all of those. Oh, okay. You bet on all those fights. Okay, nice, nice. The fights that AR just mentioned right there. Okay, so now the early prelims, we got Roman Kopylov taking on Marco Tulio. Um, okay, very even fight right there. I might have to go. I'll go with. Hmm, that's a tough one right there. Let's see here. Hold on a second. Let me get my. Excuse me for a second, guys. Let me get my charger going here, just so my thing doesn't die on me. Okay. So, oops, that one died. Hold on. All right, good. We got it charging right now. Okay, so Roman Kopylov versus Marco. I'll probably go with Roman Kopylov on this one by decision. What do we got right here? He says predictions on Wardley versus Dubois. Nakano versus Diamante, Tizu versus Diaz, Morel versus Chael, referee. Okay, so these are the boxing fights that are going. Okay, Mosley Jr. That's right. Yes, signed to predictions on Shemaev Strickland. I did that one already. You're gonna have to rewind back on that one. Just sort of trying to finishing up the. Here we go. Okay. So for the Roman Kopylov fight, yeah, I'm going to Roman Kopylov by decision. Pat Sabatini versus William Gomez. Yeah, that's a tough fight as well, man. Okay. So let me see here. William Gomez. Let's see where William Gomez has been in his career. All right, so let's see here. William Gomez. Okay, coming off of a win against Robert Richula. Pat Sabatini. Let's see where Pat Sabatini has been. Coming off of a winning streak right here. Yeah, I'm going Pat Sabatini. Coming off of a win by Shepe Mariscal has a grappling win over Richie Lewis, another grappling win, another UFC Fight Night win. I think he gets this one by decision, so I'm going to Pat Sabatini by decision on this one. Let's see. Yeah, I made predictions on those already, my man. I appreciate you typing that, but yeah, I made predictions on all those fights that you mentioned already. You're gonna have to rewind back. Okay. All right. What else here? Hold on. Let me go back to that Roman Kopylov fight. Who did Marco Tullio just recently beat? Fights out of the Shuto box. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, man. Okay, yeah, I'm going with Roman Kopylov on that one. Yeah, he just lost by spinning back fists against Christian Leroy Duncan. Okay, what else here? Oh yeah, Bagasir Sorkarov against Jordan Santos. Obviously, yeah, that's going to be an easy win. Uh, Sukarev, Shamayev says that he's better than him. He says, or late sub probably. Sabatini by decision or late. Yeah. Surkov, he's 11-0, and Kamzat said that he's better than him. Man, I'm gonna go with him. I think he wins by first round submission. And Clayton Carpenter taking on Jose Ochoa. Yeah, very close matchup by the way. 25 years old versus 29, both 8-2, right? And then one no contest for Ochoa. All right, let's see where Clayton Carpenter has been in his career. Let's see where Clayton Carpenter has been. Uh, all right, so he's coming off of a 2-fight losing streak. Okay, but what about Jose Ochoa? Let's see where Jose Ochoa has been. 8-2. Okay, he's also coming off of a loss, but that's by decision. How did Clayton Carpenter lose in those fights? Uh, Kimura, okay. And then unanimous decision. Yeah, I'm going with Ochoa. I'm going with Ochoa by decision. So that's it, guys. That is my official predictions for the fights. We talked about all the fights in UFC 328. We also talked about some boxing that is also going on this weekend. He says Ochoa put up a solid fight against uh, Loner Kavanaugh. Yes, he did. Yes, he did. Yes, he did, and that's exactly why I'm picking him for this one. So yeah, that's all of the fights for UFC 328. What other details did we talk about this one? Okay, yeah, we obviously also talked about the Iran attacking U.S. warships. What's the reason behind that? Speaking of politics, how about this, man? Arman Sarukian is going to be the backup fighter for the White House card. So that means if Justin Gaethje pulls out, Ilya Tapora is going to have to fight him. If Ilya Tapora pulls out, Justin Gaethje is going to have to fight him, which, by the way, will only make the Ilya Tapora fight bigger later on if Arman Sarukian happens to walk out of that one with a win. Uh, Brian Brian says If every human being fought until the death, until one human being left, who would still be alive? Man, you know what? That is a very interesting question, right? It would probably depend on the context of the type of fight that you're talking about. If you're talking about something with weapons, or if you're talking about something with no weapons and with, I don't know, um, maybe non-lethal weapons, man, there's a whole wide range. But if you're talking about unarmed fighting, that would be hard to predict, because yes, we know in a one-on-one situation who is who, especially when we have the UFC, especially when we have boxing, especially when we have Muay Thai, especially when we have all types of uh, fighting styles and fighting professions out there for us to draw comparisons from. But if we were to do it with just an unarmed situation with other humans involved, obviously the numbers are going to be involved, which means fatigue sets in, which means all types of variations set in. So I don't know, man. I don't know if there would be a strong conclusion to that one. He says, no, hand-to-hand combat. Okay, yeah, that's my final answer on that one is, I think that when it comes to unarmed fighting, and by the way, this kind of goes into everything that we're talking about with the fights, right? When it comes to unarmed fighting, it is so unpredictable that different variations can alter the result of the match. Okay, and let me say that again, because this goes into everything that we're talking about with the fight weeks coming up, right? And the fight weeks that is going on this week, and the fight weeks that has been going on for the past decades and centuries, right? When it comes to unarmed fighting, it is so unpredictable because of the different variations and circumstances that alter the result of the matchup or the conflict that is in front of you. Uh, Tyler Betts says, you, Guru, and Joey. Oh, okay. He says, okay, so we're your favorite guys. He says, you, Guru, and okay, you're asking you, Guru, who walks out of the room alive. I think I would. Yeah, I think I would. Obviously, I'm far more athletic than MMA Guru. MMA Guru has size on him, but do you not think that I've wrestled and grappled and sparred on a daily basis with guys that are 6'3", 200 some odd pounds? What would MMA Guru offer me that I have not seen? So that's a given. Um, you, Guru, and Joey. Yeah, me, bro. That's not even a question. Joey's not even a factor. At least with MMA Guru, he works out, right? I don't know to what extent, but yeah, he says Guru is low key jacked. He is, right, right. So MMA Joey has nothing whatsoever, right? He would be a nothing burger and would offer nothing in that scenario. He says Jerry versus Glover was the greatest fight of all time. Yeah, that was a pretty good fight. What is your favorite boxing fight of all time? Greatest favorite boxing fight of all time. I'm gonna have to say Anthony Joshua versus Vladimir Klitschko. Right, that fight was so exciting. Like, I felt in my gut that Anthony Joshua was going to win that fight, but then again, you never knew. And then that fight also sort of exposed a bit of his weaknesses that fell into the Andy Ruiz fight 2 years later. So yeah, that was my favorite uh, um, boxing fight of all time. He says top 5 favorite UFC fighters. Okay, so we'll go with the of all time. Are you talking about of all time? Of all time. Okay. Okay. So number one, let's go with Khabib, George St. Pierre, John Jones, uh, Anderson Silva, and Brock Lesnar. There it is, right? And then in different variation of days, that would absolutely, change to a varying degree. But for the most part, yeah, those are my top five. Brock Lesnar was my favorite fighter for a very long time, man. You know, if you remember, if you guys remember that picture of me and Uriah Faber training together, you know, I was wearing Death Clutch shorts on that one. You know, those were Death Clutch shorts. Uh, you know, the same shorts that Brock Lesnar wore back in the days. So, you know, hopefully, yeah, man, hopefully that answered your question on that one, man. So, all right, guys, listen, I think that is all that we have for this one right now, right? Went here for about, you know, a good 2 hours or so. You know, we're going to land the plane here. I hope you guys enjoyed my prediction. I hope you guys enjoyed some of the current events that I sort of put out there, along with, you know, the fight predictions and other fight talks that we talked about. He says, in the next 5 years, who will be the top 10 pound for pound fighters among the new talents? Wow, you're asking a very tough question here. Okay, well, you know what? Let's do that. Let's take a look at the UFC rankings, assuming you are talking about the UFC rankings. So let's talk. Let's go with a pound for pound list so far, right? So obviously Islam Makhachev is right up there. I'm going to say Arman Sarukian is probably going to be number one at some point. um, Either Joshua Van or Tetsura Taira, or maybe a combination of those two. I could see them having like a long historical rivalry. Um, in the bantamweight division, I don't know if there's anybody that could be really a standout undefeated guy there. Movsar Evloev, I could see him being a top five. So let's go with, okay, let's go with Arman Sarukian, Movsar. That's two. Um, I'll make a bold prediction on this one. Usman or Magomedov. I could see Usman or Magomedov coming in here, right? So that's three. Who else? How about in the big boy division? So in the heavyweights, Tom Aspinall. I think Tom Aspinall. Um, I don't know, man. You know what? There's guys that could beat Tom Aspinall. Josh Hokett, maybe. You know what? All right, I'll say Josh Hokett. How about that? I'll go with Josh Hokett. Um, so that's four. We got to throw some women's in there too, man. I don't really have any confidence in upcoming women right now that are coming up. Tatiana Suarez. Okay, maybe Kayla Harrison, right? Well, I'll go with Kayla Harrison. I think Kayla Harrison will still be on top. So there you go. That's my top five for that one. And since I did UFC, all right, let's go with boxing. All right, let's give my future top five for boxing. Boxing rankings. Let's take a look at the boxing rankings right now in the boxing scene. Shout out to boxing scene. Okay, so Moses Otama obviously is going to be one of them, right? Moses Otama will definitely be top five in the heavyweight division. Um, David Benavidez, although man, he's also going to be heavyweight, so they're gonna really ramp up the heavyweight division here. So uh, Jai Apataya. How about the lower weight classes? Shakur Stevenson, I think he'll stay for a while. So, all right, let's go. And remember, you said in the next 5 years, right? So, Moses Otama, Shakur Stevenson, David Benavidez, but we got to go a little bit lower than that. In Wow, man, Iris Londa still doing the dang thing right there in the middleweight division. Oh, Hamza Shiraz. How did I forget Hamza Shiraz? Obviously, yeah, hands down, Hamza Shiraz is going to be, you know, a top pound for pound for a long time. Who else? WBO. Uh, yeah, Jenna Beck. I could see that. So, wow, man, Josh Kelly is already IBF 154 champion. Okay, Um, hmm. Oh yeah. Boots Ennis and Boots Ennis. That's what we'll go with. We'll go with Boots Ennis. All right. So I think I gave you a top five on that one, right? So what did I give you? Moses, Shakur, Jai, David, and Shakur, David, and who was the other one? Um, Hamza Shiraz. Hamza Shiraz. All right, so there it is. Moses, Shakur, Hamza Shiraz, David Benavidez, and dang man, not a lot of choices. Oh, Jai Apataya. Jai Apataya. So there you go. I give you my top five future right there, man. And guys, listen, with that in mind, that is all that I have for this one right now. Do not forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next one. We went over a little bit of everything here. Full card predictions, full card preview as well. Some shocking predictions. Also, not only that, we went over some news, right? Iran attacking U.S. ships, and Arman Sarukian becoming the backup fighter for the White House card. And then we gave you the future top five of boxing, as well as the future top five of the UFC in the future. There you have it. And with that in mind, don't forget to like and subscribe. I will see you in the next one, inshallah.